I hope so. So, thank you. Yes. Next time round, I'm going to ask for just a few inches of height that will enable me to address the microphone correctly. So, yeah. Why is there life at all? This is the interesting question, I think, because it's not at all obvious. As Whitehead, again, another of my heroes, pointed out, if it's about persistence in existence, the secret is never to have been alive. So mountains last for millions of years, creatures last for a few. At least the very simplest ones, the most ancient ones, were already lasting far, far, far longer than we do. So there are actinobacteria in the depths of the ocean, single examples of which may be 1 million years old. And yet we have 70 years. So evolution has not moved in the direction of making us better at persisting or existing. And I don't really think that's the purpose of it at all. After all, life requires a sort of bucking of the general trend of the universe if we're to believe that increase in entropy is the way that things go, the second law of thermodynamics. So what is all this about that is very energy expensive, that increases complexity and increases beauty, and is highly creative? Because I think my answer to this is that the cosmos is fundamentally creative, and its relationship with whatever we call the ultimately ontologically existing whatever is the ground of being. The ground of being somehow requires the reciprocity of what has evolved to be what we know as the cosmos. Partly to realize, both in the sense of come to know, and realize in the sense of bringing about, some of the beauty and complexity that is enfolded, implicit in that ground of being. And that in a way, that ground of being is coming to know itself through the creation and know what it is capable of. And its essence is love. In all the traditions I know around the world, the supreme being, whatever it is essentially love. And certainly in Christianity that is the case, and in Buddhism that is the case. The nature of love is nothing if it is not a relation. And so love has to be relational. It has to be something that is happening, that is resonant, that is responsive to what is there. And it's those encounters which we call our experience. All that we experience is an encounter, a resonance between what we can bring and what the world offers. And it's out of that that we find our experience. And so this resonance produces ever greater beauty and complexity, bringing further into being the divine itself as characterized by beauty, goodness, and truth. And that is the nature of the cosmos. So stop worrying about death. We can't prevent death, but we can prevent life. And what worries me is that we're doing a rather good job of preventing it, both in the sense of almost abolishing the living in favor of things that are mechanistic and made by us, or sidelining the living at any rate, but also that for those of us who are living, the sense of vitality, the sense of life, the sense of an uprising of something creative in us is being damped down by the culture. The opposite of life is not death, it's the machine. So focus your energy there. We're any ideas about why this? Oh, there we go. We're hollowed out by the lack of deep sustaining beliefs, by disconnection from our history and abandonment of the values without which no society can stand. We lack core strength of intellect and morality, and we're like a building that has lost core strength and has to be shored up by ever more scaffolding. Instead, we should know we may be fallen, broken, but that is not that all is lost. The result can be beautiful if we can mend it. There is an eternal truth common to all wisdom traditions that involves the remaking, the more beautiful recreation of something that feels or is broken. And I came rather late in life to the Kabbalah, the mystical tradition of the Jewish religion. But in it there is a wonderful story in the Lurianic Kabbalah of how creation happened. And so the first being, the ground of being, God, is called Ein Sof. And Ein Sof wants to create. So does Ein Sof do some great command and stretch out a hand and say, let there be? He doesn't actually. His first action is to withdraw, which sounds paradoxical, except that in this universe there has to be a place for something other than Ein Sof, something with which it can relate. And so that first movement is called Tzimtzum, which means withdrawal. And then in the space that has been created, there are set 12 vessels that will receive whatever it is that Ein Sof brings about. And a single spark of fire comes out of Ein Sof and falls on the vessels, and they're shattered. I mean, in fact, for reasons I don't want to go into, 8 out of the 12 of them are shattered, but anyway, basically the vessels are shattered. So creation so far has involved withdrawing and things that have been broken. And there is a third phase, which is repair, in Hebrew tikkun, and that is a phase in which humanity plays a particularly important role. It is our role while here to take these pieces that have something of the divine spark in them and remake them more beautiful than those vessels ever were or could have been before they were shattered. And I've put up here an example of a Japanese art form called kintsugi, in which ceramics are repaired, and the lines of the repair, which are sometimes picked out in gold, are part of the beauty of what has been repaired. So we need to engage in repair. By the way, there's an interesting parallel with the way the brain works in this story, because in essence, the right hemisphere begins by apprehending what there is, and it doesn't push into it and say, I know what that is. It allows it to speak for itself and come into being. And then the second phase is it gets passed to the left hemisphere, which categorizes it and said, oh, I see what that is, one of those, puts it into the jars, if you like. And then that doesn't really work, and it has to be retaken up by the right hemisphere into a new, now enriched home. So we need to re-embody the world. The triumph of being human is having a body and using that body to help grow a soul. You know, Keats, who died at the age of 26, was preternaturally wise for his years, and he called this earth a vale of soul-making. In other words, the soul is not a given thing any more than anything else in the cosmos is a given thing. It's a process. It's something that is ever more coming into being. And now our choices are we can embrace the soul's life and make it thrive, or we can let it wither and die. Just as a gardener can't make a plant, but given a plant, it can tend it, it can clear space for it, it can allow it to grow, or it can neglect it and it will wither and die. But for at least 300 years, we've preferred our abstractions to concrete embodied reality. Our misbegotten ideas preferred to thoroughbred life, our misguided theories to experience. Theory is the realm of the left hemisphere, schemes, maps, diagrams, unlike the complexity of life. And have you noticed that theory is so dominant in our age? There are a lot of very crackpot theories around, as you've probably noticed. Have you also noticed it's become sexy? So, yes, it's theory. And you can pay through the nose for the beauty of theory. Values are very, very important in this story. Truth we've talked about, but beauty and goodness, as well as truth, come from the heart, which is why they can't be feigned and they can't be substituted for by clever ideas, however much people may try to do that. Credo, I believe, in Latin, the word with which the creed begins and from which the creed gets its name, originally comes from cor do, I give my heart. And I was talking earlier about how belief is a matter of a loving allegiance to something that you wish to be drawn to emulate, to become more like, rather in the way that Elizabeth was talking about formation before we had the break. And goodness is love. It's not rule following. Rule following is very unlike what is true goodness. And beauty ravishes the heart. It doesn't amuse us coldly with paltry ideas or theories. Whatever we're pursuing is not working. We need radically and urgently to alter direction. So how to start making a difference? Achievement of these great values can't be done by special management training programs, as AI suggests. So I saw an output from ChatGPT in which it was asked about wisdom, and it parroted some sort of things that people will say about wisdom and how special and important it is. And then it was asked, well, how are we going to get wisdom back into our lives? And it said, well, we form little study groups, and we have a department of wisdom which will dictate courses people must go on and get qualified in it and so on. This is the way we now think. But as Madame de Sévigné said hundreds of years ago, there are certain things that if you don't already understand them, I can't help you. I think that is really, really important thing to bear in mind. We can't just manipulate humans like machines to be like something we want. That must come out of the culture of their family, of their school, of their neighborhood, of the nation to which they belong. And as well as those important things, we're now attacking family and education and the life stream of our history. Instead, we must take responsibility, because that's another responding word. And I'm talking entirely about our responses. So first, there are some things not to do, about 20 of them. But actually, stopping doing things is very creative. So when people would come to me with various problems, and what do? I could have told them, well, we can do this, we can do that, we can do the other. But my first exercise was saying, well, what is it that you're doing that is not working? And let's try not doing that. And see what comes in its place. Because once again, it's like the gardener. The gardener can't make wisdom, can't make anything. What the gardener does is simply create the conditions under which whatever it is that is wanted to grow may grow. So first, here are some things not to do. By blaming others and failing to take responsibility for ourselves, we weaken ourselves, we degrade ourselves, and we lose an opportunity to make things better. By sentimentalizing, and I believe our culture is sentimental, we become inadvertently cruel. Cruelty and sentimentality are very closely related. By demanding safety, we make the world more dangerous as well as less creative. By demanding equality of outcome rather than equality of opportunity, we create injustice and inefficiency and lower standards in a way that jeopardizes us all. Meanwhile, we degrade those groups we say we are trying to protect. By managerializing the professions in pursuit of profit and efficiency, and here I'm thinking particularly of university lecturers, doctors, areas I know from experience, we've made them wasteful and inefficient. There's not enough money now to do medicine because there are just so many administrators with much larger salaries than the doctors that they're supposedly advising, although they can't possibly advise doctors because they haven't had a lifetime's experience of what it is doctors have. By neglecting and even vilifying our history and tradition, we do not become more creative, but lose the chance to be creative, to nourish ourselves from our past, and to create a coherent future. It's the lie of victims and victimizers. This is not to deny that we need to be aware of things that we have done that have been wrong, and that we do not wish to repeat. By seeking individualism at the expense of social cohesion, we actually become not more ourselves, but less so, because who we are is generated by the connections we have, the society that gave birth to us, and which I believe it is part of our duty to give back. By likening ourselves to machines and machines to ourselves, we betray what we are. Max Scheler's Ens Amans. It was Scheler was the philosopher with the pyramid of values, and he called man Ens Amans, which means the being that loves. We are emotional and morally bound beings, and above all, we neglect our spiritual nature when we think of ourselves as machines. There's something in us much greater than we know or can know. By attacking nature, denying nature, rebuffing nature, trying to free ourselves from nature, we betray ourselves and our origins, all that we have been given and that we are, and deny ourselves the only place where we can truly belong, and the mother that gave birth to us. By denying our intuitions, we make ourselves dumb. By allowing an obsession with theory to triumph over evidence and experience, we perpetuate lies. By seeking undue certainty, and therefore excessive need for control, we erode freedom, privacy, and quality of life, and ultimately help to generate totalitarian societies, undoubtedly the worst kind in human history. We create a future that is full of, ironically, terrible uncertainties, the only certainty being that it will indeed be terrible. By relying on technology, we weaken, not strengthen ourselves, and make ourselves vulnerable to disaster. It's so obvious, isn't it? If somebody wanted to cripple this country, they wouldn't have to spend money on expensive wars and bombs. They could just simply cut the internet, and the whole country would fall to its knees. This is already beginning to happen. By and we're forgetting the way we used to do things before there was the internet, you know. We actually were amazingly efficient at doing all kinds of things, but now we're so dependent on the internet that the writing is on the wall. By substituting virtual connection through social media for real life connection, as Elizabeth was saying, we become lonelier, more out of touch, and less nuanced in our views, as well as measurably more anxious and depressed. By engendering ever more rules, we replace complexity with mere complication. The difference is a top-of-the-range jet engine is a very complicated system. But a single cell is a complex system. It's doing 10,000 things every second that are massively interrelated. There's no way we understand how this can happen. But a complex system has re-entrant loops, it interacts with itself and so on, and cannot be modeled as a machine. And everything that lives is like this, and many things that are not alive also are like this. By attending to the category, we diminish the individuals in the category. In the real world, there are only individuals. By disrespecting nature, which is not the same as the environment, something you might have a department of, we disrespect ourselves. Nature comes from the idea of what is giving birth, and that is a very important thing to remember, that maternal principle that nourishes us, that gave us life and to which we return. By disrespecting humanity, we become worse, not better. Stop going along with rhetoric about the awfulness of humanity. Respect the extraordinary capacity of humans for good and recover dignity and purpose. Not invent them, note, but find them again. Dignity will require restraint and discipline, not just doing whatever we want. Once we find dignity and self-respect again, we will treat one another better. This is not for an instant to lose our awareness of what we're capable of doing when things go wrong. It's rather the other unexamined side of the same coin. By disparaging men or women, white or black, we're mindlessly destroying much that is of consummate goodness. This is not to forget our wrongdoings, whatever social group we belong to, but to perpetuate the negative is unhealthy and foolish, wasteful and unjust. We're so busy disparaging one another and in the process diminishing ourselves that it's hardly surprising we're so confused and unhappy. By pursuing ever greater control and power, we narrow our capacity to enjoy life and to help what is good, beautiful, and true flourish. What makes life worth living is what can only be described as a resonance, an encounter with other living beings, with the natural world, and with the greatest products of the human soul. I would go so far as to say, with the cosmos at large. It's only in encountering the uncontrollable that we really experience the world and come fully alive. The resonance of a real relationship with a truly sentient other is not possible where there's no freedom, no spontaneity, and no life. So much for what we shouldn't be doing. But of course, what could we do? Well, hidden there were things to do, they were just expressed as not doing. But that aside, what can inspire us to move forward? Reinvigorations of a culture have always looked backwards but stepped forward. This is true of the origins of the Roman civilization, of Renaissance, of the Reformation, for what it's worth. Most changes in the history of ideas have come from a retrospection which is giving power to move forward into a new area. And those that didn't, that just decided we're going to tear up everything and start again, were willful tyrannies that destroyed culture, not breathed new life into it. By far the most important aspect of their success was a spiritual and moral quest, one that cut across political and other allegiances and involved allegiance instead to ultimate values. Why do I say ultimate? Because I believe that this ground of being, whatever you like to call it, you can call it God. Unfortunately, that word has a lot of baggage that puts people off, but nonetheless, we must realize that there's something here that is bigger than us, that is creative, and it's evidenced everywhere in the cosmos. Its values seem to me to be those that Plato identified of what is good, what is beautiful, and what is true. And so they are really aspects of the ontological primitive of life. So there are three levels on which we can respond, which one might call the global, the local, and the transcendental. And I believe that despite the way things might sound, these are in ascending order of importance. In the first two, global and local, the left hemisphere can play a useful role as the servant it is designed to be, rather than the ignorance and headstrong usurpation of the master. In the third, it's out of its depth. So one, global, what do I mean? I think we have a duty to resist what is wrong in whatever way we can, as we are already practicing, allowing something new to come forth, the work of clearing away, stopping the erosion of the forests, halting the poisoning of the seas, and if anything, trying to reverse these. These are, of course, very, very important goals. But note that global initiatives have achieved far too little so far. It's arguable, and here I quote NS Lyons, that the alignment of corporation and state that occurs through the public-private partnership model seems far too often to operate entirely outside the system of democratic governance. Whatever the threat from climate change, this vast exercise in public-private partnership in the name of green energy transition has produced little to show for it, except for making a select subset of well-connected people a whole lot richer than they would be otherwise, and they were already pretty rich. The second is local, and I here refer to the work of a friend of mine, Dougald Hine. He published recently, a year ago, a book called At Work in the Ruins. And his idea is that we must accept that this civilization is no longer viable. It is going to collapse. It's just a matter of when. But what is important is what happens after that. What can we leave that will help people rebuild? And this means rebuilding communities that don't lie, that do operate locally on trust, that bring back into human connectedness the important elements of love and respect. Such things need to be sustainable, and they need therefore to be somewhat more modest than our current projects. And they need to be transferable, something to build on. And this may be easier when we are finally desolate, because at the moment we don't want to give up very much that we've got in order to produce these results. Now, there are some that I just happen to be connected with, and I'm going to just refer to them rather briefly. The first is the Fathom Trust in rural Wales. And the meaning of the word fathom is to reach out and around, and it was a way of measuring the girth of a tree. And the brain that's behind this, the genius behind this, is Will Beharrell, who's actually with us in the audience today. I didn't know he was going to be here, but I'm delighted that he is. And they have principles of resilience, recovery, and regeneration. And their work is to help a series of constituencies, burnt out and depressed professionals and health carers, children from rather impoverished industrial backgrounds to understand the relationship with working with your hands, working with animals, and so forth. And for people who have long-term intractable or difficult to treat mental health problems. I like very much that one of their subsidiary programs is called Dare Gale, which is from a Gerard Manley Hopkins poem, and refers to the skylark singing its song into the storm. Their officially sanctioned statement is to promote physical, mental, and spiritual well-being using traditional crafts to restore life-giving connections to body, soul, nature, and society. And then, I'm just taking these because I'm either on the board or an ambassador or whatever for these ventures. Moral Imaginations, which is in a very different setting in Camden. It's a movement of moral collective imagining to increase radical kinship with the human and more than human world, present, past, and future. And the genius behind that is this young woman, Phoebe Tickell. The third is a program in Cambridge called Da Vinci Life Skills. And there you see the founder, Rosina Lytton-Dorelli. And her principle is what she calls biophilic education, education towards respect for and love of all that is living. And then there is Local Futures, which is a worldwide organization. They say, we envision a localized future where most of our food comes from nearby farmers who are a part of our community and who ensure food security year-round, where money we spend on everyday goods continues to recirculate in the local economy, building community prosperity along the way, where multinational businesses and banks adhere to the rules of society, not the other way round, where local businesses are thriving and multiplying, thereby providing ample, meaningful livelihoods for everyone. And this is the brainchild of Helena Norberg Hodge. You can see me engaged in conversations with each of these on the internet somewhere. But what we're really doing here is something very special. I may need help with this, but is there a way I can activate this slide? Techie people, it moves. Can you make it move? At the bottom of the screen, there should be a little bar, and you click the arrow and it moves across. But anyway, I'll just have to tell you about it. This is a Swiss sculpture, which is... Oh, it's going. Now watch that. We can turn what looks to us like a negative into something positive. And sorry, I haven't quite finished yet. You have to put up with me for a few more minutes. Yeah. Not long to go now. The third is the transcendental, the spiritual life. Now, the ultimate question is not will this survive, will that survive, but what is of primary importance, what is most valuable to us? And I suggest these things are love, beauty, goodness, truth, and our relationship with one another in society, our relationship with the natural world, and our relationship with the divine. There is a vast body of evidence that shows that those three things, relationships with one another, relationships with nature, and relationships with the divine, have so many benefits that doing without them causes anxiety and depression. And they are in themselves profoundly healing, and they're the things that we are doing away with. According to certain people I won't name, believing in God is something that only a halfwit would do. Nature is a field of resource for us to exploit, and our duty is not to worry about the rest of society, but just to do our own thing. But people say, but how is this going to work? Because, what's it going to do? I'm so small, they say. But we don't know that's a sort of left hemisphere assessment, which is based on measurements and size. But we don't know how important a single person can be in the history of a culture. We don't know how important, once an idea begins to take hold, how, when it's expressed, it will help mold things towards an end that we can't now predict. We don't know the effects or the future or what matters in the realm of the spirit. How, if I say my love means everything to me, my love for her is as wide as the sky, as deep as the ocean. How small or big is that? It's pretty big. And these things are something that we share with one another. They're not just inside my head. They're part of what constructs the world. The way in which we think and attend brings about whatever is in the world in the end. And that means that attention is a moral act, something that you may have heard me say before. So all the important changes happen from in here, not out there. If we could recover some humility in the face of our ignorance, some compassion in dealing with our fellow human beings, and some sense of awe and wonder before the cosmos, we would be already a long way along our journey. It's been said that if we could change radically the hearts and minds of only 3% of people, we would be able to make the changes we need to see in the world around us. So my recommendations are really quite simple. Begin by cultivating a sense of awe and wonder rather than clever knowingness towards the extraordinarily complex and beautiful cosmos that is a pure gift that we've been given a life in. Think about what we are to do with it, and in order to do that well, to have compassion for others and for all the living world, not a sense of aggressive embattlement before something that we probably don't understand. And to begin to cultivate a sense of the little that we can know, not willing ignorance, but the beginnings of true knowing, which is when we realize how little we know. And that brings me to the other aspect of this final strand, the transcendental. It's I believe there is, to use a technical term, a psychomachia in which we are involved. That means a battle of the soul. I think that all those people who through history have talked about the need to be fighting for something, resisting something, being tempted by something, and by something that was very real, not just something made up by the cognitive areas of my brain, but something that is real in the cosmos and is real for us. To Jung, gods and demons were not simply mere social constructs. Rather, they were expressions of powerful and ancient unconscious forces, archetypes which existed not only in the psyches of individuals, but also of human collectives, such as nations. Why, he asked, in the Nazi time, had Germany apparently gone mad? Jung commented, perhaps we may sum up this general phenomenon as Ergriffenheit, a state of being seized or possessed. The term postulates not only an Ergriffener, one who is seized, but also an Ergreifer, one who does the seizing. And Wotan, the god of war in German culture, is an Ergreifer of men. And unless one wishes to deify Hitler, he said in 1936, which has indeed actually happened, he's really the only explanation. And the year in which Hitler was born, 1889, the German painter Franz von Stuck painted this depiction of Wotan. There seems to be something across the middle of it. Oh, I see. Okay, never mind about that. That's the name of it, The Wild Hunt. But have a look at the face of Wotan. Have you seen that somewhere before? So there are connections, synchronicities, spiritual forces that are at work, and there is a battle, a spiritual battle, in which it's not given to us to take no part. We play a part whether or not we know it. And in Jung's house, over the door, he had inscribed these words, which mean, see, called or not called, God will be there. And in other words, there are things that are happening that are not up to us, except to know how to respond to them, and to make ourselves aware of them, and to act in the cause of all that we believe is good and loving. Life is not about individuals, it's about a flow. It's like a stream. And what I believe is that in an image of Schelling's, each one of us is like a whirlpool in a stream. A whirlpool is in a stream, not in the sense that a ball is floating in the river. We are in the stream in the sense that the whirlpool is the stream. It's not in it. It is the stream at that point for that time. And while it's there, it can be photographed, it can be measured, it has power to move stones. It's very real. But afterwards, the water moves on and goes somewhere else, and the stream carries on. Now, I believe our lives are like this. We are the whirlpools in the stream, and we shouldn't worry about whatever it is that happens to us when we die. If there's nothing, then we won't be there to be disappointed. But I suspect there's something there that is very important, and it's to that we need to show our allegiance, our belief, and ascribe to it the strength we can give to further its values. Thank you very, very much.